Sake brewing starts with the shubo or moto, but koji making or seikiku must happen first. Making koji takes 2 days, so these are days 1 and 2 of any batch. Koji is made in a special room called a koji muro, which is about 98 degrees Fahrenheit and humid. On the table, or toko, lumps of rice to become koji or kojimai are broken up and the temperature drops, all by hand. Here's a package of the koji, which is a friendly mold called Aspergillus oryzae. The video shows the koji being sprinkled on the kojimai, which is called tokomomi. I'm showing the videos without narration and without music, so you get an idea of the atmosphere. The koji comes out of the can like a magical cloud, like you would see a genie come out of a bottle. As you'll see, it's done slowly and deliberately so the koji falls onto the rice and isn't blown around the room. No one talks and no one moves, except the kurabito sprinkling the koji. If you have to move, you move very slowly, and if you have to speak, you do it quietly, so as not to disturb the still air. Next, the koji needs to be mixed into the rice. This is done a couple of times. At first, the rice is very sticky and clumpy. A few hours later, it starts to separate into kernels. The rice is then gathered and wrapped up for the night. Koji is made fresh each time it is used in the recipe, which is a total of 4 times. On the second day of any koji batch, the rice is hand scooped into this small machine, which finishes breaking up the clumps. The rice is then spread into smaller trays, or kojibuta. On day 3 after steaming and after the koji is made, the brewing starts. The first step is making the fermentation starter or the yeast starter called the moto or shubo. Koji or kojimai, brewing rice or kakemai, and water or shuzo yasui, and yeast are mixed in a small tank called the subodai. Lactic acid is also added for about 90% of all sake, which is called the sokuju method. The moto is then left for 2 weeks so the yeast can propagate. Sake brewing is the only brewing method using multiple parallel fermentation. Koji turns rice into sugar, and yeast simultaneously turns the sugar into alcohol. On brewing days 1 and 2, koji was made for the moto. On day 3, the moto was started. On day 15, more koji was made for the first addition to the moromi, which takes 2 days. So on day 17, the moto is ready for the first addition of kojimai, kakemai, and water. Daimon Shuzo splits the moto into 2 small tanks. Day 17 begins Sandan Shikomi, or Shikomi. I've seen it spelled and pronounced both ways. Kakemai, kojimai, and water are added by hand 3 times over 4 days. The first addition on day 17 is called hatsuzoe, or soe. Rice is steamed for each addition, and koji is made fresh for each addition. On day 18, the day after the first edition, no rice, koji, or water are added. Instead, the Moromi is left to dance lively, which is called odori. Day 19 is the second edition, called Nakazo or Naka. First, the moto was pumped from the small tanks to the large tank. Then, an increased quantity of kojimai and kakemai were added by climbing the ladders and dumping the satchels of rice into the tank while water was pumped in.
So beautiful. Smells great.
Day 20 is the third edition. The huge quantity of rice from the breaker upper cooler downer was blown through a tube across the brewery ceiling to rain down into the tank. Koji was added by climbing the ladders with satchels of kojimai. Water was pumped in. The mixing paddle, or the mixing stick, is more like a brush with a 10-foot handle. The volume of Moromi starts out pretty far down in the tank as the rice, koji, and water are added. So the mixing of the third edition is great arm exercise. We were mixing as the rice was blowing in from above and the water was streaming in. Working the long stirring stick was made more difficult by standing on the ladder. Here you can see ice being added to the tank because the temperature probe, which you can also see, is registering too high. Remember that the rice being added just came from the breaker upper cooler downer right after it left the steamer. After the third edition, the fermentation period begins in the same tank at a controlled low temperature. Because Daimon makes premium sake, fermentation is around 30 days. These are junmai sakes, which means they're made with only rice, koji, and water, so no brewer's alcohol is being added. The next step is pressing. At Daimon, this is done by what I call applied pressure, using a machine made by a company called Yabuta, so everyone calls it a Yabuta. The Yabuta has a piston that presses an accordion-like membrane, leaving the kasu, or sake lees, in the press. The just pressed sake that exits the Yabuta is called shiboritate. The small tank with the kurabito looking into it is the shiboritate tank, full of sake, cold off the press. The sake is sampled here for quality. The next steps are clarifying the sake. The clarification process didn't really lend itself to photos. The first type is called urabiki, where the remaining sake lees settle in a post-pressing tank. The second type is filtering, or joso, using activated charcoal or a mesh filter. You've probably heard of nigori sake, which is sometimes called unfiltered. In fact, nigori is cloudy sake in which some of the lees remain. It is not unfiltered sake. Unfiltered sake is called Maroka. Pasteurization, called haire, which means heating to 65°C, usually happens after pressing, but not necessarily in a particular order. Haire kills bacteria and inactivates enzymes that can spoil sake. The method used to pasteurize sake in Japan was developed 200 to 300 years before Pasteur. Most of Daimon's product line is pasteurized. Daimon also makes unpasteurized sake called nama. Shiboritate is also nama because it is cold off the press before pasteurization. Daimon and most breweries mature their sake, usually for 6 months. This can happen after the sake has been pasteurized once, or after urabiki, or after filtering. The sake may be sampled from time to time, which is called nomikiri. Here's the Daimon Kurabito team. From left to right, Besho-san, then Marcus Consolini, then Yue-san, he's the Toji, then Art Devant, one of my co-interns, then me and my other co-intern, Dave Hora, then Nakai-san, then Kiyoshi-san, and Takeuchi-san. As I said, Ue-san is the Toji, or brewmaster, and Marcos Consolini is the managing director of Daimon and the first non-Japanese to hold his position in a Japanese sake brewery. I hope this video has given you an appreciation for what it means to make handcrafted sake. I have another video called How Sake is Made, which shows a very much more automated industrial process. Compare the methods from this video and that video, and you'll see that Daimon is true handcrafted sake. Please remember to subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching.